I'm Eric Linask. We're here in Santa Clara for our Editors' Days. On the program with me now from AMAX is Julia Shi. Julia, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
So let's talk data centers a little bit. A lot of change happening in the data center world. Why do you see so much change and evolution taking place right now?
Well, as you know, you've heard these catchphrases like big data, media, a lot of media sharing, YouTube, et cetera. These are massive files. And so the data center footprint is getting, huge. It's a lot of data that they have to store, they have to process, et cetera. And so, as that data expands and grows exponentially, the cost of running a data center infrastructure is getting, huge. It's out of hand. And so companies are looking for ways that they can manage the cost, keep their infrastructure efficient. A lot of this comes down to virtualization, and it comes down to, well, how can they, from all the way from the hardware to their operations, get more out of what they have. And so you see, a lot of, for example, Open Compute out of Facebook. They open up their design to create a more efficient data center hardware, and then they gave it to the community to say, can we get companies to build off of this? And so my company, AMAX, we focus on how do we help data centers transition from legacy hardware, the way they've done things, maybe not as efficiently, to the modern data center where you're looking at things from, whether it's Open Compute, it's white box hardware, the other open standards, open networking, switching, OpenStack for virtualization, and build a more efficient data center where it's more usable, you're converging your resources, and basically getting more out of your footprint.
So if I want to take my let's call it my traditional data center to today's world, be able to meet today's requirements, where do I even start?
Okay, so I would say number one, make your hardware more efficient, right? You don't want to pay the brand taxes. You want to see what can you build on the hardware side that's as cost effective as possible, as commodity as possible. So you're looking at building off of white box solutions. These are brands that are maybe the manufacturers. They may not provide the services, but luckily, you've heard of ODMs, you've heard of systems integrators, you've heard of resellers. So the modern landscape has a new category called solutions providers, and basically they can work directly with the ODM manufacturers, but provide all the services you would normally expect from a tier one, whether that's building the systems, loading the applications, building it from all the way from servers to the rack level, clustering the racks, adding networking. And so I would say, number one, make your hardware more cost efficient. Networking. I don't want to name any name brands, but you know what they are. They're very expensive. If you want flexibility, you want certain changes, you have to wait for them to update their software, their features. When you look at open switching, you're pretty much making the hardware, you're separating the hardware from the software, making the hardware a commodity, and using, let's say a software like Cumulus or Open Network Linux, and which is also a language that's more familiar to a lot of your developers. So, you don't need special networking, a networking team, but maybe if you have people who are well-versed in Linux, you can actually do a lot of the software functionality in-house and cut the costs. I would say, going with an open switch setup, you get a lot more control on the software layer, and it's significantly less expensive than buying networking from, some of the known brands. So I would say cut the costs on the hardware side, and then, virtualization. How can you get more out of your hardware? VMware's been a leader in the space for as long as virtualization has been available. Sure. You have, OpenStack right now. OpenStack is open source. It's how do you build a private cloud, your data center applications in a virtual environment. There are a lot of companies out there. I know OpenStack is somewhat hard to get into. It's very time consuming. And so knowing that, what AMAX did is we offer a total solution. We can load OpenStack, the libraries, and then basically if you have people on staff, we can give you the solution. They can set up the OpenStack. Or we have our CloudMax solution, which is basically an OpenStack starter kit. It comes with a GUI. All the libraries are there. You can do provisioning, monitoring, setting up the whole the cloud and get started, testing out all your applications in OpenStack. We also partner with a company called Bright Computing. They're very interesting because their software, it'll let you manage your entire resources, whether it's your legacy, whether you decide, okay, now I'm going to scale with lower cost commodity hardware. You'll pull it all together, pull all the resources, converge all the resources, and then they can manage, either the bare metal or their OpenStack deployment. So you can even pull up virtual Hadoop servers, virtual HPC servers, VMs, etc., and manage it all under one software umbrella. So for the most part, it really depends on the direction the customer is comfortable with. But overall, our goal is to guide the customers in getting to become a more modern data center in terms of cutting costs, improving their IT, and overall becoming much more efficient.
What about folks who are building out hybrid environments and needing to connect their traditional data center to something up in the cloud?
Oh, absolutely, like AWS.
Yes.
And so actually, Bright Computing, which we integrate into our solutions, there's a cloud bursting feature. So, for example, we have tons of companies who say, look, let's say I'm paying let's say $30,000 a year, $30,000 a month with AWS. We're looking at $360,000. You can buy 2 racks with that, and you own that. So maybe that's the kind of threshold that they decide, okay, maybe we look into to bring that in-house. And so if they find during peak times, you load the software, you find during peak times you do need a little more compute than the hardware you have on site, you can cloud burst into AWS, use those the services of the public cloud, but shut them down when you don't need it, you get the best of both worlds. So that's definitely something we're considering in terms of, what are real-world scenarios that our customers are going through? What's the best way to utilize all the resources available, whether it's, AWS is very convenient, but can be very expensive. So once you get to a certain scale, how can you now be efficient with what maybe building out your own hardware, but still utilizing the services when you need it, but not paying for it when you don't.
How big of a factor is geographic location for data centers?
Geographic locations?
Yeah.
In what way?
In the sense that there's certainly been plenty of conversation around building out data centers in Iceland, for instance, because
for the cooling,
the cooling, and just generally, the geographic environment. How much does that play into?
Well, it's a luxury, right? If your company, can build out a data center in Iceland, whether it's coloing or from the ground up, it's definitely something to consider. But one thing I will tell you, from a hardware standpoint, every single technology company is looking for ways to make things more efficient. The whole concept around open compute was we're going to build these massive, rack after rack, massive hyperscale data centers. How can we make it more power efficient, more cooling efficient? And just from, we talk about high efficiency power supplies, et cetera. All the ODMs are adopting this. So you'll see as time goes by, the technology itself is going to get more efficient. It's going to be more power efficient, et cetera. Obviously, if you build it in a place where the environment itself supports the cooling, it works. But if not every company is going to have that luxury.
Right.
So it's a matter of can we make the technology efficient, to save those costs.
You've talked a little bit about some of the challenges data centers or companies are facing with their data center build-outs. What kind of challenges are you as a company facing?
Challenges as a company?
Yeah.
Servicing all the customers that are coming to us. Because I'll be honest, there's such a need out there. And companies, and we're talking anywhere from, the mid-sized companies up to, the Fortune 100s where they're saying, look, we've been doing things a certain way for 10 plus years. We've got a mishmash of all kinds of vendors, all kinds of products. Even in a data center when they're upgrading, their networks, all of a sudden, the storage, they have issues, et cetera, because there's not a lot of communication, et cetera. How can we make the data center more manageable and service all our growing IT needs? And stay cost effective and make the bill payers happy, and so it's really about project by project. Every need is different, every setup is different, every pain point is different. And so one thing that AMAX does, it's basically our core business is we're very flexible. We have standard products. We have standard. We can tell you, these are best practices. This is what we've done for other customers. But depending on specific clients' pain points and needs and where they're trying to go, the scale, et cetera, application requirements, we build out a program. We build out solutions to fit their needs to help them transform into that modern day data center that can capture all the IT, the cost savings and efficiency.
It sounds like a very consultative approach that's just becoming not only just popular, but almost a requirement today.
Yeah, but keep in mind, we're first and foremost a hardware manufacturer. So, our strength is integrating and building the most, the kind of the cutting edge data center infrastructure solutions. But what we found is it's one thing to say, okay, we've got the solution. If companies need so many other different pieces to make it work, we realized we want to be a solution to our customers, not just say, here's the hardware, good luck with that. So what ended up happening is we worked further and further up the stack, created more services, because at the end of the day, these customers need to move, towards, that efficiency. They need to be able to scale, and especially scaling is happening at an exponential level. So what we offer is basically, the hardware solution, but bundle around that. How can you now make it integratable and consumable inside your corporation?
Excellent. A lot of exciting stuff going on in the data center. Julia, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.